All right. Hopefully you are all there. Can I get some thumbs up? Oh, yep, there we go. Okay. Yay! It's been an adventure today with technology. So I'm I'm here, you're here, we're all here. Go us. All right. I am going to start off with a quick introduction. My name is JJ Pianchi. I'm the Applied Health Sciences Librarian at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. My research on disability in libraries and accessibility as well. So I do a lot of publishing in that area. And today I'm going to be talking about disability in the workplace. Let's talk about accommodations and boundaries. I see some people I know. Hello. Good to see people I know. I am going to encourage you to use the Q&A part if you want to throw in a question. I realize that the chat is probably going to move really fast. So if there's a question you definitely want to make sure I see, then definitely please throw it into the QA part rather than just regular chat. As I've seen in the chat go flying by, my pronouns are he, him, his. And I think that's about it. Hopefully you can all see my title slide with a purple lotus. Is that correct? I'm seeing thumbs up. Okay, awesome. Then let's get this started. Okay, so we have 3 pictures on the screen in front of us. Who are these people? Go ahead, put it into the chat. That's fine. I'm sure it'll all go whizzing by. Yep, we've got Giles. Everybody always says Giles. Giles is from Buffy. Somebody mentioned the Ghostbusters librarian from the original Ghostbusters. So we have the Ghostbusters librarian, and who's the last? Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Well done, Laura Sheehan. That one's the tough one. Like, that one's the one people struggle with, as well as Ghostbusters librarian. So taking a look at these 3 librarians, what do you notice about these 3 particular librarians? What jumps out at you? Oh yeah, we see white people. They're old. They're very conservatively dressed. Giles is in a 3-piece suit. Last Crusade librarian is wearing a bow tie. They're much older, so they're not young folk. We've got some glasses going on. Giles and Indiana Jones is going on with glasses. Looking at the backgrounds of these particular 3 librarians, what do you notice about the backgrounds? Lots and lots of books, lots of print. This is also a sign of the time. These are 3 older movies, TV shows, so keep that in mind. We have book stacks, a lot of bookshelves, high bookshelves, very, very traditional looking. If you look at the Ghostbuster picture on the top in particular, when we look at the tables, we can see that the chairs have arms, which is problematic for someone who's big like me. So I'm a large sized person. I would not fit in those chairs. If I was using a wheelchair or a motorized wheelchair, there's no space for me. The only place I could go would be at the end of the aisle. And so, my chair and all my stuff is going to hang out in the end of the aisle, which really sucks. So there's a lot going on here that says, if you're queer, if you're disabled, if you're Black, if you're insert minority status here, insert, teenager status or something else, this doesn't feel very welcoming, right? And yet this is the view of the library that the media has, right? The media sees the library as an older, or sees the librarians as older, white, conservatively dressed, surrounded by books, and it's musty and it's dark, etc. So even though as librarians, right, we love these three characters because we're all like librarians. But when we think about these as a representation of us, as us to the public, this isn't necessarily a very welcoming representation of us in terms of connecting to people who aren't old and white or able-bodied. So something to think about. I usually start my lectures with looking at these three pictures just to get us thinking a little bit about insufficient number of visible tattoos. Yes, that is correct. You know, when we all graduated from library school, you got a cat or a dog, a cardigan, and a tattoo. Like that was the requirement along with your diploma. Anyway, so let's talk about disability for a minute. We've got 4 pictures on here. What do these particular pictures represent? We've got color blindness in the right-hand corner. We've got physical disabilities in the left with the wheelchair. We've got mobility. So very good gender fluidity, or more specifically neurodiversity, is the infinity symbol that is the rainbow colored. I used to have a autism puzzle piece there that was one of the ones that was rainbow colored, and I replaced it with this particular symbol instead because autism speech is the worst. The puzzle piece, and as I've learned from people with autism, I'm not a puzzle to be solved, right? So I no longer use the puzzle piece or have autism speech linked to my autism library guide because that site group is very problematic. So instead, I use the neurodiversity symbol, which is the infinity symbol with the rainbow coloring on it. What about that last one, the one right underneath the neurodiversity symbol? The 4 people together, 1 person apart. Could be depression. I like to use it as Karen Scoville is pointing out, mental health. I like to use it as a representation of mental health. You could say in depression, anxiety, PTSD, all those would work, mental illness. So, you know, the intention behind this particular image is to represent mental health of some kind, because mental health is so stigmatized, and people tend to feel othered because of mental health conditions. Okay, so these are all representations of disability, right? When we think about disability, we often think of disability as, you know, the cane used by people with blindness or low vision, wheelchairs, hearing aids, things like that. But disability is actually way more than the things we physically see. Okay, it is mental health, it is neurodiversity, and it's other things too, like color blindness. So really quick short story, I have a coworker who's a video gamer, and I'm a gamer too, and he and I talk games a lot. And it wasn't until like 2 years into our friendship that he told me he had color blindness. And I was like, how does that work with video games? And he's like, most of the time it's okay. But he's like, if there's a game where some part of the game is really dependent on the color I can't see, and like it's not, and I can still keep playing it, if I get to a part where that color is really important, he's like, I have to give the controller to my wife. Like I have to let someone else do it for me because I can't see it. And, you know, the game development companies are generally not really good about creating accessible games. I was just having this conversation actually with a colleague here at University of Illinois. He and I are playing Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and he got me onto it, so this is all his fault. And the words on the map screen are not they're not large enough, and there's not enough context there. So like, or contrast. So I can't really see the words because the words are, the map is dark and the words are dark. So yeah, it's bad. It's just bad is what it is. So disability is a lot of stuff going on. So one of the questions that I ask people when I do this presentation is, well, why might we need laws about disability rights? So that's a real question for you guys. Why do you think, and just in the chat, why do you think we need laws about disability rights? To ensure equity, to assist people. Otherwise, there won't be accommodations. Protection, definitely, to be included, consistency, equal access, awareness, to protect people, the general human rights approach. Yeah. So one of the things that, especially this particular question, I like using in college classrooms because it's shocking, right? Because the answer is deviant and disabled people were forcefully sterilized in the eugenics program in North Carolina up until 1978. I was born in 1978. This is within my lifetime. I'm 43. And so the fact that up until the year of my birth, we were forcefully sterilizing people with disabilities in this country is totally not okay. And that's why we need laws that protect the people who are most at risk. One of the things I also point out in this slide is that, I ask people, how did the Holocaust start? When we talk about the Holocaust, World War II, Germany, it wasn't with Jews, right? It was with people with disabilities. People with disabilities were the test case. And so what they did, they being the Germans, was they went to care facilities and euthanized severely disabled people. And the idea was that German citizens would allow the German government to euthanize their own family members who had severe disabilities. It wouldn't be that much of a jump to euthanize or murder other groups of people that we don't like. Jews, Roma, homosexuals, etc. And that tends to be kind of a bit of a shocking statistic. A lot of people don't know that. But this is why we need these laws, because in the past, people with disabilities, people who are different in any way, have been treated badly, right? For those of you who did the Medical Library Association, where is it? The Medical Library Association book club recently, Black Man in a White Coat, he talks about how African Americans don't have a very healthy, or maybe unhealthy, depending on how you look at it, fear or distrust of the medical establishment because of things like the Tuskegee experiments. So highly recommended, by the way, really good read and an easy read. This is not a hard read. So because of things that our government has done, we need laws that protect us, like the American with Disabilities Act. This definition is not in the ADA, but I like this definition because it draws out the fact that it's not just physical disabilities. So that's one of the reasons why I really like the this particular definition, is it brings out psychological disorders, emotional mental illness, etc. So that's why I like it. Because disability is not just, it's not just having limbs or eyeballs that don't work correctly or ears that don't work correctly. It's also a lot of other things. So for instance, it's mental health, it's chronic illness. If you have fibromyalgia, if you have muscular dystrophy, if you have cerebral palsy, any chronic disease, that's considered a disability under ADA. Temporary disabilities are also part of the ADA. You break your leg, you're in a cast, you're covered by the ADA. A lot of people don't realize that, PPE, the mask, the gloves, all that kind of stuff for your work in libraries is covered by the ADA. So this is all covered by the ADA. Okay, so let's talk about some mental health stuff because a lot of people don't talk about it enough. So 1 in 5 adults, about 19%, is going to have a mental disorder in any given year. This is all pre-COVID. We're not talking about the COVID years. I can tell you from personal experience that the rate of anxiety, depression, etc. disorders during COVID is much higher. We don't have numbers on it yet, so this is all pre-COVID, right? About 60% of the population is going to have some kind of mental health disorder during their lifetime at some point. And then in any given year, we've got statistics here. Do any of these statistics really pop out at you? Any in particular? Surprised that depression isn't higher. Remember, this is major depression disorder, which means that we're talking about like severe clinical depression, not I don't want to say minor, but not as major depression. So substance abuse disorder seems low at 8%, potentially. These are all US numbers. They don't add up to 100, and that's okay. CPTSD versus PTSD. The CPTSD is still relatively new as a diagnosis, and is usually considered PTSD non-specified. I don't think it's been updated in the most recent DSM yet, and we'll talk about that as well. Some people are saying like 2011 was a long time ago. These numbers haven't changed that much. I've looked at more recent numbers. I haven't updated this because honestly, I just haven't had time. But the numbers haven't actually changed all that much. Basically, percentage up or down. So there hasn't been a lot of change there. Allison is responding to schizophrenia, and actually schizophrenia is the one I'm looking for. So schizophrenia is in at 0.45% or 0.5%. And it seems low largely because there's an overrepresentation in the media. So in the media, we often see like on crime or police procedurals, the person with schizophrenia, going off their meds and hearing voices and becoming violent. And that couldn't be further from the truth. A lot of people with schizophrenia, yes, they hear voices. Those are severe cases. But also they are aware that they are not like quote unquote regular people. They tend to self-isolate, and they tend actually not to be violent. So the representation in the media is actually fairly substantially skewed, which is why we think of schizophrenia as being a violent mental health disorder and that it's more prevalent than it actually is. Okay. So what is the average time between the onset of a mental disorder and getting help for that mental disorder? Your guess is in the chat. Light up my chat. We've got months, we've got years, 10 years, 12 years, 3 years, 2 years, depends on severity, 5, 7. For those of you that said 10 years, congratulations, you win the gold star. It is 10 years as the average. It's actually like 9.7 something or other. Why do you think that it takes 10 years? Some never seek help. That's very true. The chat is like trying to catch up. I think that's hilarious. But why do you think people wait so long? One of the reasons, there's a lot of reasons why people wait so long. I was going to wait for the chat to catch up, but we got to keep moving. So stigma is one of them. I've heard that mentioned in some of the other sessions. But also health insurance. Up until the Affordable Care Act, if you had health insurance, it usually only covered like 10 sessions, and maybe if you were lucky. So, you know, seeing a therapist is really expensive if you don't have health insurance. The stigma is really big about it. You know, do you have the resources to actually go? Asking for help, denial, all those kinds of things are definitely part of why people don't get help, or why it takes so long. But, and this is something else to think about, is the parable of the frog, right? So if you throw a frog in a pot of boiling water, the frog is going to jump out. Okay, the frog is like, "Yo, this water is hot. I'm out of here." But if you throw a frog in a pot of cold water and turn the heat on, the frog is going to hang out until it dies, right? Until something changes in its environment to make it realize that the water is too hot. And mental health and even chronic illness is a lot like that, right? So you make these little micro adjustments over a long period of time until something happens. So let me talk a little bit about language. People first versus disability first. You know, in terms of, do we want people first or disability first? It's actually really up to the person. Generally speaking, I talk about people with disabilities rather than disabled people. But there are some incidences where the people with disabilities actually want the disability first.
Okay, everyone, we should be back. Thank you for your patience. I did go retrieve Stella so that you could see a little tiny dog, but I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to JJ because we have lost enough time.
You know, I love the internet when it works, and I hate the internet when it doesn't. Stella! So anyway, points if you know what that was from too. Okay, so a few words on language. Did you all hear about deafness? Is that okay? Streetcar named Desire. Good catch, Carrie. Yes, absolutely. So I was talking about people first. That was about deafness. Handicap versus disabled versus functionally diverse. So handicap is a very old-fashioned word. We don't like that. Please stop using it. So it's not handicapped parking or handicapped bathroom stalls. It is, we want to focus on accessible parking, accessible bathroom, okay? So think about accessibility rather than handicap. Handicap is pretty outdated. Disabled versus functionally diverse. I like disabled or disability is the term that we use in the literature. It's a term that we use a lot. I'm not in love with disability as a term because it implies a binary, right? And yes, it's streetcar named Desire. So disability means binary. Either you have a disability, or you have a disabled body, or you have an able body. But realistically, our bodies and our brains are really on a spectrum, right? Which is why I like the term functionally diverse better, right? So functionally diverse implies that spectrum, which is why I like it. So for instance, on this functionally diverse spectrum, I'm a large sized person. I have complex post-traumatic stress disorder. I wear glasses. I have a lisp. Many people would consider those all to be disabilities of some kind, and including the lisp and the eyeglasses. So, but I think we all have some comorbidities and chronic illness. So not chronic illness, but disability. Anyway, I'm a little flustered from all the computer issues. Let's talk about accommodations. Okay. So the accommodation process. Now, I want you to keep in mind that I am at a very large institution. We have about 50,000 students here. The library has its own human resources department. We also have the university level human resources. So just keep in mind, I'm at a giant institution. The accommodation process basically looks a little bit something like this. The employee determines that they need an accommodation for a disability. They contact HR, or in my case, an accommodation specialist. We have an entire office that does nothing but accommodations. You have to provide proof of disability, generally true for everybody. So sometimes, the question is, well, when they say proof of disability, what do they really mean? And you're going to have to ask, the person who wants that proof, what do they actually want? And that was a question that I did ask my accommodation specialist. Do you want a doctor's note from the guy who writes my prescription once a month? Or do you want a letter from my therapist who's the person who's actually treating me, right? And so it turned out that they wanted a letter from my therapist, because the doctor is like, yeah, JJ has complex post-traumatic stress disorder. I prescribe, I prescribe this medication every month, but he's not actually treating me. He is, but his treatment is to, write me a prescription every month. So, but you have to provide proof of disability, which can feel invasive. Then the accommodation specialist or human resources hash out what's possible with the supervisor. So there's usually some kind of discussion about what your needs are. And those needs have been defined in the letter that your doctor or therapist wrote for you. So when I met with my therapist to talk about the letter, she was like, let's talk about that. What do you need? And I'm like, I need an enclosed, safe space where I can work. And we talked about white noise machine, noise canceling headphones. We talked about several different things. So in her letter, she clearly delineated the things she felt that I needed, that her and I had talked about. So there was a discussion among HR and my department head, and eventually the dean, about what accommodations were possible. And then from there, you try out the accommodation, and you report back. Is this working? Is this not working? Can we try something else? Or it's working great, don't make any more changes. Basically lather, rinse, repeat until you find a that actually works. Okay, that's what the process is supposed to look like. In reality, the process can be a hot mess, a hotness, because of the term reasonable. So within the Americans with Disabilities Act, it says reasonable accommodation. And what's reasonable to you as a person with disabilities, chronic or otherwise, is going to be different than what's reasonable to the employer. Okay, so that term reasonable is a big kick in the pants. The definition varies. There's a lot of flexibility that can be provided to the employee. And, my recommendation is the employee knows what they need. Like, trust them when they say they know that they need noise canceling headphones and that it has to be the expensive kind. So, in my own experience, that was something that was actually a real problem. Like, not only, so I have complex post-traumatic stress disorder, I also have better than average hearing, and I have a high level of situational awareness, which means I am completely aware of my surroundings at all times, and I hear everything. And what I found is that the cheaper noise canceling headphones have like a low pitched whine or a high pitched whine that I can hear. But the more expensive ones like Bose don't. And so if I don't want to lose my mind, I have to have a more expensive brand of noise canceling headphones so that I don't lose my mind. One of the things I ran into quite a bit during my accommodation experience is that people just didn't believe me. They didn't believe that I had complex post-traumatic stress disorder and that I needed the things that I needed. And I ended up having to do a lot of contextualization and a lot of education. And the big thing there, and something I talk about with a lot of people, is contextualize, contextualize, contextualize. This includes when you go to the doctor, especially for those of you with chronic conditions. Don't walk into the doctor's office and say, oh, my pain's a 5 today. For you, what does a 5 look like? For me, a 5 is the kind of level of pain I have every day. I've gotten up, I've taken my anti-inflammatory, and I've taken some Tylenol. That is a normal day for me. 7, you know what? I'm not showering today. I'm ordering takeout. I'm taking extra Tylenol. 9, I'm curled up in bed crying. Right? I mean, so contextualize your pain. That is huge. And that also includes contextualize your disability. Me sitting here at the head of the table will not work because I can't see the door. Me sitting on the side of the table works because I can see the door, so that I feel like I can get out if I need to. It requires doing that contextualization. 1, requires that you understand your disability, and 2, also requires that you be willing to talk about it, both of which are hard. I'm not going to lie to you. Asking for accommodations is hard, and a lot of people, I think everybody I've talked to about the accommodation process, goes through a basically ROI scenario, return on investment. Is the pain of going through the process going to get me what I need and ultimately cause me less pain? And that's huge, right? So a lot of people definitely spend time thinking about that cost benefit analysis, doing an ROI, because especially if you have comorbidities, if you have a mental health disability, those are all going to be really big. Also, revealing your disability puts you in a super vulnerable position. And I personally have used that vulnerability as both armor and weapon, to not only fight for what I need, but also to fight for others as well. And it really does take only one person to make changes. So my accommodation is in closed office. The rest of my department are in open cubes. And yes, absolutely, Nancy, askjan.org is a fabulous starting point. There was a lot of pushback to my my accommodation. A lot of pushback. It was seen as favoritism. It was seen as, oh, that's JJ trying to be special. I fought for basically a year and landed up hiring a lawyer. And once I did, once I actually got my accommodation, other people who had been struggling, one of whom had literally been struggling for 2 years to get an office for their disabilities, like all of a sudden they got an office. So it really it really was about one person, breaking the path, like being a pathfinder. There's been a lot of changes at the University of Illinois, and many of them for the better. We have more accommodation specialists. We hired an ADA coordinator. The situation that I found myself in would probably more than likely not happen now because of the changes that have happened, in part because of my experience, and in part because I've been willing to talk about it. One of the things I've talked about is I've talked about my accommodation experience in an article in Library Trends, and it's in the notes in the PowerPoint, because I'm like, you know what? When we don't talk about this stuff, we hide it. It becomes something that's taboo, something that we don't talk about, and that's not okay. There's a lot of negative effects of not getting an accommodation: discouragement, distrust, leaving the institution, low morale. For me, it was really debilitatingly high levels of anxiety. It was horrible. And, I was on the edge. And yeah, I can't even describe the relief when I got the accommodation. I hate that I had to hire a lawyer to get it, but the fact of being able to finally be in that office, but the whole process was so exhausting. And I mean, to be perfectly blunt to all 505 of you, I could have sued the school for everything it was worth, because when I moved up to that fourth floor office, my department head revealed my disability without my consent. That is illegal. According to the American with Disabilities Act, that is illegal. But by that point, I was so tired from fighting that I was like, I can't fight even more. So yeah, I mean, I was like, whatever, somebody tell her why what she did is not okay. I'm moving my crap to the fourth floor. That's exactly how I looked at it. So, I know we've only got a couple minutes left, but I said we're going to talk about boundary setting, and let's talk about boundary setting. So what are boundaries? It's the things that we are willing to do and not willing to do. How do we set them? By being clear about them. I love Brene Brown's quote, "Clear is kind, unclear is unkind." So one of the things that I started doing very quickly when I got here, at a very large institution where there's an expectation that you are available 24 hours a day, was I'm not available 24 hours a day. Every single class that I visit, I say, I'm available 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. That's when I answer email. I do not answer email at night. I do not answer email on the weekends. I will get back to you between 9 and 5, Monday through Friday. So I set that boundary with students and with the professor. of what is possible, and what I'm going to be doing. I'm clear about what my boundary is. And I'm also clear I've also used that same saying with my colleagues. I've told them specifically, like, no, I'm not going to answer email after 5 o'clock. My weekends are my time. So being clear about your boundaries of what you will and will not do. You know, anytime there's a meeting with a supervisor, my department head, the dean, an assistant university librarian, these are all people that are above me. I don't meet with them without an agenda. So if they say, hey, I'd like to meet with you tomorrow at 3, I email back and I say, that's fine. What is the agenda for this meeting? If they can't provide an agenda, I say, that's fine. I would like to meet later in the week when there's a representative from human resources present. Like, no. You know, if you can't tell me why we're meeting, then I'm not going to this meeting alone. So, you know, it's different for everybody, but setting those boundaries of what you will and will not do. One of the things that I've done for myself during the pandemic, and a boundary that I've set for myself, I get an hour for lunch, and I take that entire hour. It might only take me, 20 minutes to heat up lunch or make a sandwich or whatever, but I take the entire 60 minutes. Those other 40 minutes, I'm playing Valhalla, or I'm playing a video game, or I talk to a friend on the phone, or I read a book for fun, anything to take my brain off of work. So yeah, those are the things. So boundary setting is really important, and it's really, really important when you have disabilities. Another thing I really want to emphasize is that when you're talking to supervisors, deans, HR, whatever, about disability, always contextualize from your worst day, not your best day, your worst day. And your worst day is important because a lot of disabilities are chronic and they get worse over time. And just because, you have, 3 out of 7 days that are really, really good, well, you know what? You have 4 out of 7 days that are kind of crappy. So always contextualize and talk about what your worst day is, not what your best day is. Because then when you have a worst day, they're going to be, administration or whatever is going to be like, well, but you said you could do this. And I'm like, yeah, I can do it sometimes. But, I also need these other kinds of accommodations because sometimes I can't. So yeah. Okay. I've got like time for one question. So, how do you set boundaries when you're not sure what they are? Get clear on what they are. Be clear of what they are to you. And boundaries usually revolve around what your morals are. And I would also say, if you're having problems with boundaries or boundary setting and you're not sure what your boundaries are, no offense, talk to a therapist, because they will help you kind of feel out in a confidential way how to mark those boundaries, what your boundaries are, what you're willing to do and what you're not willing to do. I used to have a slide in this deck about what's the name of it? ETAR, vocational awe, and how vocational awe is actually really damaging to the profession. It's not okay. And that, like, we have to sacrifice everything for the library. No, you don't. Do not sacrifice everything for the library. You have a life. I have cats, right? I don't have a partner. I don't have kids. I have cats. That's good enough. But you know what? I want to spend time with them. Furry little murderers. So, yeah. Unfortunately, at the time, I really apologize for all of the connection issues. Please feel free to email me. Seriously, I mean, I know there's some more Q&A questions in the QA list. Please email them. I'm happy to have a chit chat with you through email. Not a problem at all. You guys have been great and really kind with being patient. So I hope you got a lot out of this presentation. And that's what I got. Back to you, Bobby. Question. I presume everybody can still hear me.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So when I'm searching for a job, do I reveal my disabilities in interviews? Totally personal decision. I do. I cannot hide mine. I walk with a cane at this point because I have some damage to my left ankle. I'm a big guy and I write about my disabilities for a living. So I do have to, I do reveal when I interview. And it's been very instructive. It actually tells you a lot about a potential workplace and how they treat you when you have a disability and you need accommodations to come visit them. And that's huge. I've had really great experiences revealing my disabilities on job interviews. I've also had really terrible ones where I'm like, the people were really nice and it was an interesting job, but there's no way on earth I would work for these people because of how they treated me and my disability and my accommodating needs. Ultimately, for me, I'm in a position of relative safety. I have a job already. I'm not tenured yet, so I have some job security issues, but I already have a job. And so as I've interviewed for other positions, I'm interviewing from a position of safety, right? I'm not desperate for a job. So I think it really depends on how open do you want to be, how much of a part of your identity is your disability, how do you feel about your disabilities? How comfortable are you with talking about disability? Again, thinking about the cost benefit analysis and that return on investment. Yes, absolutely. How the interviewers and potential coworkers react to you talking about your disability tells you far more about them than they realize. One of my favorite, that's a word now, questions in telephone interviews or video interviews is just to ask, like, what do you like about working there? And in one of the interviews that it was a 5-person panel, 4 of the people basically said, oh, the people are great here. They're really amazing. The 5th person said nothing. And not only did that 5th person say nothing, when I deliberately called them out, hey, person, what about you? They just smiled. And that was the biggest red flag you've ever seen in your life. And I was like, yep, don't want to work here. Because, clearly there's something going on there. When, an HR department says, I need proof of your disability to provide you with a second plane seat or to provide you with, what you need to be accommodated when you come visit us. I was like, nope, I withdraw my candidacy. I was like, I am not providing you with a doctor's note just to interview with you. That's ridiculous. I am not even an employee of your university yet. And that's boundary setting, right? What you will do and what you will not do. But again, I'm coming from a place of privilege. I already have a job. I'm financially secure because my job is stable, at least for the moment. So yeah. So that was a good question. Still can't hear you, Bobby.
No, Bobby, nothing.
Put it in the chat. Please join us for virtual networking. Okay. All right. So my session is over. Join us for virtual networking. Again, please feel free to email me. I'm totally happy to talk some more, answer your questions. Not a problem at all. All righty.
Thanks for watching. This video was produced by the network of the National Library of Medicine. Select the circular channel icon to subscribe to our channel, or select a video thumbnail to watch another video from the channel.